Without any explanations, I would like you to check this video.
こんにちは。こんにちは。ありがとう。ありがとう。こんばんは。こんばんは。さよなら。さよならよ。魔法の言葉で楽しい仲間がポポポポ。おはよう。おはようなどいただきます。いただきます。挨拶するたび友達増えるね。
What is your impression of this ad? Did you find anything disturbing about it? You might think this is a just harmless, innocent children's song. In fact, that's exactly what it is. An advert teaching people the importance of greetings. However, through a tragic coincidence, this wholesome message didn't stay that way. The reasons why I would like to talk about the story of the advertisement is strongly connected to what happened 15 years ago on the 11th of March in Japan. On March 11, 2011, we experienced the Great East Japan Earthquake, known in Japan as Higashi Nihon Daishinsai. It was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan and the fourth largest in the world since 1900. The epicenter was located 130 kilometers off the coast of Miyagi Prefecture, deep beneath the sea. The 9.0 magnitude quake was so violent that it shook the entire country. From the far north to the south, the only place that remained still was Okinawa, nearly 2,000 kilometers away. However, the horror wasn't just the earthquake itself. Just 32 minutes after the massive earthquake, tsunami hit the east coast of Japan. The tremors staggered a massive tsunami that battered the east coast. In the northern regions, waves reached staggering heights of up to 40 meters, easily swallowing and sweeping away entire coastal towns. Most of the victims were lost to this devastating wall of water. Many were unable to evacuate in time, while others simply couldn't imagine a surge of that scale was even possible. Even in Tokyo, hundreds of kilometers away, the infrastructure collapsed. The rail networks shut down, leaving tens of thousands of commuters stranded, unable to return to their families. For weeks, the news was a relentless stream of devastation. We watched as the northern regions were decimated, unbelievable footage of towns wiped off the map and survivors waiting on rooftops to be rescued. Countless families were separated, waiting in agony for any word. Some eventually cried with relief. Others cried for a much more painful reason. Then, in Fukushima, the nuclear power plant suffered multiple explosions. A mass evacuation began as the threats of radiation grew. At that moment, even the government seemed overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the catastrophe. We were all exhausted by the grief. It was a time of profound uncertainty, not just for those in the disaster zone, but for the entire nation. Japan felt physically and emotionally unstable. In the wake of such tragedy, a single word began to dominate: fukinshin. It translates roughly to being inappropriate or imprudent. As the scale of the disaster became clear, a wave of collective guilt spread across the country. People felt a deep hesitation to show joy or express overly positive emotions while so many were suffering. For much of the year, and also the next few years, Japan was in a state of profound national grief. The victims and those in the disaster zones were never far from our minds. This shift wasn't reflected immediately on our television screens. Standard Japanese commercials are typically famous for being incredibly upbeat, high energy and colorful. In the context of a national disaster, however, the vibrant energy felt jarring and disrespectful. They feared that their usual messaging would be seen as fukinshin. In the first few weeks and months, major corporations began cancelling their scheduled advertisements, leaving a massive void in the broadcasting schedule. With almost no commercial sponsors left, the TV networks were left with hours of empty airtime to fill. The advertisement you saw at the beginning of this video was one of those rare survivors. It was created by an organization called AC Japan, the Ad Council of Japan. They are a non-profit known for producing public service announcements with deep social messages. That specific ad, titled Aisatsu no Mahou, The Magic of Greetings, was originally designed to be a wholesome, innocent way to teach children the importance of greetings. Because it didn't promote a commercial product, it was deemed safe to air. As a result, it filled a massive void left by the disappearing commercials. It was cheerful, it was harmless, and it was innocent. Also, it seemed. But then came the irony. Because there was almost nothing else to play, this iconic song began to air repeatedly, every hour, every morning, and every evening, again and again and again. It is no wonder that today, this advertisement has become a primary trigger for the Japanese people. It is inextricably linked to those tragic days. This cheerful melody absorbed the collective pain of our nation, transforming from a children's song into an unspoken symbol of the suffering and the somber silence of that time. This was a life-altering tragedy for the entire nation, with over 26,000 victims overall. Especially for those in the northern regions, the scars run deepest. Even now, 15 years later, survivors are still processing a lifetime of loss, both physical and mental. The tsunami was a force that didn't just destroy, it consumed. It swallowed entire lives and dragged them back into the ocean. Because of this, many families are still waiting for their missing loved ones to return. 15 years on, still 2,519 people are missing. In the debris of the coast, it is never easy to retrieve what has been lost. To this day, there are people who cannot bear to see this advertisement. For them, it remains fukinshin, an inappropriate reminder of a time when the world was ending. However, I wanted to share this story with the world today. I want people to understand why this simple children's song carries such a heavy weight for the adults of Japan. To me, it serves as a memento, a reminder of a moment in history that we must never allow ourselves to forget. I was only a teenager living in Tokyo when it happened. Even hundreds of kilometers from the epicenter, it was, and remains, the most violent earthquake I have ever experienced. I remember vividly, I sat in front of the television and cried as the reports came in from the north. The stories were so intense, so raw, that it felt overwhelmingly harsh for a teenager to process. And of course, in the silence between those devastating news reports, the AC advertisement played again and again. It became permanently etched into my mind. But instead of turning away, I found myself drawn to the memory of that day. Over the years, I watched every documentary and every clip I could find. I felt a responsibility to remember. Last year in May, I finally traveled to the coast to see Ishinomaki and Onagawa in Miyagi Prefecture for myself. I had seen the destruction on screen 1,000 times, but I needed to stand there. I witnessed the destroyed buildings and the hauntingly quiet, deserted coastlines, contrasted with the resilience of the brand new town centers. In museums in Ishinomaki, the exhibits and documentaries moved me to tears once again. It reinforced my belief that this history must be passed down through the generations. I don't have relatives or friends from that region, but as a Japanese person, I feel a duty to spread awareness. I want the world to understand this tragedy so that more people might survive the disasters of the future. I often think that the Japanese ideology of wa, meaning harmony, our desire to keep the peace and support one another, is forged in moments like these, when there is no one to blame but the earth itself. All we can do is hold on to each other and find the strength to go through the toughest of times together.